This is a video tutorial on encroachment agreements and variances. Once you have read a survey and determined whether there are encroachments on the property that you're working with, then it's time to figure out how to go about getting encroachment agreements. And this tutorial is going to cover what the process is with getting a encroachment agreement, and if there are any encroachments within the city right of way, how to obtain a variance for that. If you've watched the video on surveys, that is the proper video to watch on how to read a survey and determine whether or not something is an encroachment or not. So I'm not really going to go over any of that, but if you watch that survey, this would be the second one to see because we're using the same survey that I used in that video tutorial. So as you can see here, we've got a survey, which is the summary portion of the survey. The second portion is the actual diagram. And as you can see here, we've got letters represented here. And these letters can be, the explanations can be found on the next page of the survey. So as we have here highlighted, we've got two encroachments here where there are already recorded encroachment agreements on file. So these encroachments are already covered by an agreement. This item here is not covered by any recorded encroachment agreement, which tells us that if this is a problem for a buyer, we need to, as a seller, obtain an encroachment agreement. So let's say you're representing a buyer, you've received the survey, and you notice that there's an encroachment. You have to have the conversation with your buyer on whether or not they want to move forward with the purchase, and if they do want to move forward but they want the other party to get the encroachment agreement, then you need to think like a seller and turn it around with, what do I do if I'm a seller and the buyer has asked me to obtain an encroachment agreement? So sometimes a buyer may decide that they want to go ahead and purchase the property without doing anything. It's not a big deal. They're just going to go ahead and move forward with the transaction. Then of course you wouldn't need to get encroachments. So let's say, for example, you're representing a seller and the buyer has instructed you to obtain an encroachment agreement. The next step is to contact your escrow officer and inform them that you want to get an encroachment agreement drafted. Escrow would then get with the attorney that's working on your closing documents, your deed, and ask them to prepare an encroachment agreement. What they will do is they will prepare somewhat of a boilerplate type of a standard document, and they will plug in all the information about the survey and the names of the parties involved. Now, while that's going on, that's going to take about a couple days. You're going to inform escrow. Escrow is going to contact the attorney. And while that's all going on the sidelines, the next step for the seller agent is to find out how you're going to get this encroachment agreement to the neighbor. So this item right here, wood fence from lot 31, projects 0.9 into subject property. So if we go back to our diagram, let's go see the letters here that we're working with. Okay, so we've got item B, and we've got this little portion here from lot 31 encroaching onto lot 42. And like I mentioned in the other survey class that I did, a surveyor typically will use lot numbers in relation to these particular plots of land. For whatever reason, they typically do that. Some will actually use the parcel number, but this area right here is actually considered a parcel. And I don't know if you remember, a TMK number consists of several numbers. You've got area, zone, section, plat, parcel. This would be considered the parcel number. Now, these numbers are not parcel numbers. And the reason why I want to talk about parcel numbers is because we're going to eventually work on an encroachment agreement with lot 31. We need to know how to get a hold of the neighbor. We're going to need to find out the address of the neighbor, the names of the neighbor, and that sort of thing. So how do you find out what the parcel number is? How you do that is you want to pull out a plat map, and I have a class on that too, on how to pull out the plat maps. Oops, I'm going to go back here. It is a website that you can go to obtain this is a plat map right here, and on the plat map consists of several different parcels. So if you come down here to the bottom, you'll see you've got zone, section, plat, and then all of these things are parcels. Now, how do you find the parcel number? The parcel numbers are the little numbers down in the corner with the double underline. So it's kind of small here, but you can see lot 42, our subject property, is parcel 72. Back here, you've got the encroaching lot 31, and that parcel number is 61. So what we want to do now, because we're going to get an encroachment agreement, we've already told escrow to draft the encroachment agreement, and now as a seller agent, the next step is to prepare the letter that's going to go to the neighbor asking them to work with us on an encroachment agreement. Okay, so if we take the TMK information down here and we write down 1 for Oahu, the 1 isn't here because this is an Oahu plat map, so they've left that off. But this next number is the zone, the next number is the section, and the next number is the plat. So we want to write down 1-3-7-02, and then we're going to do 061 for the parcel. Now you're probably wondering, what do we do once we've got the TMK number? Now what we're going to do is go into our real list program, or if you're using Hawaii Information, we're going to go to the tax record to locate the owner information for this particular parcel. Okay, so now here we're on Matrix. We're going to go into our real list. And once that opens up, we're going to put in the TMK number. It's taking a little while, but there we go. So TMK number 1-3-7-02. I don't think it's 002, sorry. Dash 061. And then we're going to hit search. Now pulls up the tax record for that particular parcel. Now we have an address of the property, and now we have a name of an owner. Now, a good thing to make note of while you're here is that there is a different tax billing address. So if you have a different tax billing address, I would make a note of both addresses and send the letter to both addresses. The reason why is sometimes they might be living in the house and they may have forgotten to change their billing address, or maybe it's a P.O. box or something like that. You're going to want to make sure that you send it to both addresses. Okay, now that we have an address, a mailing address, and the owner's information, we're ready to create our letter to the neighbor regarding this encroachment agreement situation. We do have a sample letter on the Elite intranet site, which I'll bring up here, for you to use if this happens to you. I would recommend using this and just kind of add your own language to it, but it's pretty much all here, what to say and how to write it. So just kind of go over this real quick. So of course we've got our information here for our neighbor, the address, and that sort of thing. You want to say that you are representing the owners so that they can understand that you're the real estate agent and that you're representing the owners of the property in question. And that you have found by way of the survey that there is an encroachment that exists. And you want to make sure that you explain the encroachment, or at least itemize it here on the letter. You don't want to include the survey without doing this, because sometimes the surveys can be very comprehensive and they can be confusing, and this neighbor may not get this sort of thing in the mail all the time, and they're going to be like wondering, what the heck is this? Your job is to make this as easy as possible for the neighbor. Your deal, your closing, depends on that neighbor signing this encroachment agreement. So there's a lot that needs to be done with this agreement, so you've got to make sure that you make it as easy as possible. That includes easy to read. So what you want to do here is put in the item that's actually encroaching. Don't put the whole survey information in the letter because that will confuse the neighbor. Just put in the portion that affects the neighbor. And then I would highlight it just so that it stands out. And then you want to put in there too that the buyer is the one that's requesting this of you, and that's not really kind of you, it's really more like the buyer, because this sort of tells the neighbor that you're selling the property. You've got a new neighbor that's going to be coming into the area, and that this is a chance for the neighbor to be neighborly and work with this person that's coming in, because you're going to be neighbors with this person. So you need to mention the fact that there's a buyer involved, and that way when they see that, they might be a little bit more cooperative. You want to make sure you mention that you'll cover all the costs associated with this. If you tell them they're going to have to pay for notaries and yada yada, they're going to be like, what's this? Forget this. Especially if you need them and they have the chance to say no, they can say no. So you want to just make this as easy as possible. So let them know that you're going to cover everything and that all that they have to do is go down and get it signed in front of a notary. That's the hardest part right there, is getting them to understand that although they may be agreeable with what they're reading in this document, that they still have to physically go somewhere and have it signed. Just a simple note here that if you do have a very uncooperative neighbor that doesn't want to go to an escrow company or a bank to get something notarized, that they do have mobile notaries out there. Some escrow companies do work with mobile notaries, and you can actually have someone go to this person's house and do the notary. And again, all of the escrow companies do the notary for free, so we like to tell them that whatever escrow company that you're working with, that neighbor can go to that escrow company. So let's say, for example, you're working with First American Title and you've got a transaction in Newiki Circle, which is right down the street from Aina Haina Shopping Center. There is a First American Title in the Aina Haina Shopping Center. You would just mention here that where that's located. Give them all of the information so that it makes it so easy for them to just go down there and get it done. One of the things that you got to keep in mind is that the encroachment agreement is a legal document. When people see that, they are going to probably freak out a little bit, going, what am I signing? And it's a little bit in legalese, so it's not really a little bit, it's a lot of legalese. And they may be kind of like, what's this? It's all legal jargon. I don't understand what I'm signing, that sort of thing. It's a good idea that if that happens, that you refer them possibly to the escrow officer, or perhaps maybe you can get a name and number of the attorney that drafted it, and that person can always call and ask questions. Of course, anyone getting something like this, if they have an attorney, it's best to have them look it over with an attorney rather than just making them, feel uncomfortable and just telling them to just sign the sucker already. You want to give them a chance to really understand what they're reading, because it is a legal document and there's words in there that might not be understandable to the layman's terms, that sort of thing. So give people the opportunity to do that if that's what they want to do. So your job is just to make it as easy as possible, and of course always give them the opportunity to call you for any questions in your letter. And also, as a closing, you want to tell them, due to the time constraints, because as I've probably mentioned before, when you are doing a survey, the typical time frame is to have a survey delivered 21 days prior to closing, but then you only get around about 10 to 15 days to cure any encroachments. So when you look in that section K3 of the contract, you will have a very short period of time to get these things done. So 10 days can go very fast. So the sooner you get on this, the better. So like I said, the first thing you want to do is get escrow to start working on the encroachment agreement and get the letter going, because the letter is going to take the longest, because you got to deal with the mail, you've got to deal with owners, putting their mail up on the counter. And again, I would definitely do something certified, return receipt, so that you know that it was delivered, that sort of thing. And you also can take it to the neighbor, deliver it directly, which is not a bad idea. And also remember that if you're dealing with people that live on the mainland and living abroad, that this could be even more time. You may end up having to ask for an extension. Okay, so when you're ready to send your letter, you need to have that encroachment agreement to be able to insert into the packet, as well as a copy of the encroachment agreement. So make sure that you have, you can even put pictures in here too. Some people have done that, where you can put pictures, the encroachment agreement, and a copy of the survey so that they are well informed when they get this packet. And if they needed to go to an attorney, it's all there ready to go. I would advise you, though, if you are going to be doing an encroachment agreement and you feel that that neighbor is going to go to the escrow company, to give them a call, escrow, and give them a heads up and have that encroachment agreement waiting at the front desk, just on the off chance that this owner does not call you. They may not even call you. They may just go straight over to escrow based on your instructions, and escrow is going to be like, oh, wait 1 second, I don't know what you're talking about. And then they have to go pull it up. And like I said, you want to make it nice and easy for that neighbor to just walk in and get it done. They can also go to a bank and get it notarized there, and again, you can always have a notary handle it. So that is pretty much the what you do when you're writing a letter. And then I want to just kind of cover real quick the encroachment agreement and what that looks like. I had it here, hold on a second. Encroachment agreement. Once you do get that back from escrow, it'll look something like this. And I've kind of highlighted here based on those two lot numbers. The first one is the neighboring lot, which is lot 31. And let's see, you'll see here this first party here is Takemori Hidani, which is the name of that person that we put on the letter. And then this is the subject property information. And then if you go down to the second page, you'll see here where it talks about first party lot, and it gives a TMK number. So again, it's really important that you look up the TMKs, because survey references lot and the encroachment agreement will reference the actual parcel. So I just thought I would show you a little bit about how that's going to look on the actual encroachment agreement. So do you see how I explained that it looks very legal, and someone receiving this might even be a little freaked out by all of this, what's in here, what's how it's worded. But then again, you might have a really smart neighbor who has dealt with this before, and it's going to be a no-brainer. Okay, so that pretty much covers the encroachment agreement and dealing with the seller. Now we're going to talk about variances. Okay, we got our survey here, and I want to show you this area right here is Niuiki Circle. This is the street that fronts the property. Okay, and whenever you see anything encroaching out in here, it is an encroachment into the city right of way. And anytime you see something like that, you're going to need to think to yourself, am I going to need to request a variance? And I've talked about it a little bit in the survey tutorial, but I'm going to talk about it again with regard to the city and county. If there's any kind of encroachment into the city and county right of way, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Either way, the city and county can at some point come in and tell you to remove the encroachment. So depending on how a buyer is going to perceive this, you just got to let the buyer make up their mind how they want to proceed. Most agents know about variances and understand the process, and probably would instruct their client to just let it go. But some buyers are just really adamant that they want to make sure that everything's clean cut, that they have an agreement with the city to let the encroachment remain. But a lot of times when you get that variance document back, that agreement, it will have language in there that says, yes, this encroachment can remain. However, if there's any time that we need to ask you to remove it, you must do so. It's just clear cut that way. Some people might argue too that if you don't set off any red flags with the city and county, that you're not alerting them to the fact that it's there. If you might worry that if you tell the city and county that it's there, they may come out and investigate it further. And find that it's not okay that it's there, and they may ask you to go ahead and remove it. In which case, if that happened during your escrow and the city and county did come out and inspect it and say, no, this shouldn't even be here, we're going to have the seller remove it, then a buyer knows what he's going to be dealing with and can back out of the contract. That hasn't happened to me. I haven't had anything like that happen. Most of the time when I do an application for a variance, it's almost always approved with a simple little language that's written in there that says if at any time we feel that we need to do something with the city right of way, that we have the right to ask you to remove it. It's always pretty clear cut that way. Never have they come out and said, no, we're not going to grant it. And I've always had them granted. So it just depends on your situation, I think. If it's just a clear, small encroachment into the city right away, they usually just say okay to it, and that's it. So it kind of just depends on how you want to handle it. But if you do decide you're going to go the variance route, this is going to be the process. So if we're looking here at our survey and we see G and H, it says, oh, sorry, 1.2 linear feet of the rock wall projects 0.7 into Niuiki Circle right of way. So we notice here that it's 0.7, which is over the de minimis, and you might have some agents telling you, and I'll tell you that this isn't true, that anything or that there is no tolerance for encroachments into the city right of way, and that is not true. I've already contacted the city and county and spoken to somebody down there that says if it is within the de minimis, there's no need for a variance. So that's that answer. But this is definitely over, so we know that we need to do something with this here. Again, this H section also has an encroachment, so you know that you now have two that you're going to need to ask for. When you have an encroachment into the, if you know you're going to be doing a variance, applying for a variance, you need to go down to the property and take pictures of the encroachment, because included, and we're going to go over the instructions in a minute, you're going to need to include photos in your packet. Not only do you want to mail a packet to do the applying, you also want to email the city and county, just to kind of like cover all your bases in case that thing gets lost in the mail, or let's say you want to maybe get a jump on the process. Okay, so we have two here. Now what we want to do is we're going to look at our variance instructions. This is the application procedures for authorization of surface encroachment. This is also on the Elite intranet site. So if you forget, well, if you watch the video, of course you're going to know, but if you forget later and you want to go on to the Elite intranet site, you can find it there by just typing in variance or surface encroachment, and you'll find it. So this kind of covers, what the purpose of getting a surface encroachment is, and what the process is. You need to submit a letter, which is what we're going to do next, and then you need to provide a survey, which is this next one here, and then you need to attach photographs. So a letter explaining the encroachment and why you're asking for the request, or why you're requesting the variance, and then you need to provide the survey, which will help the person that's going to be helping you with the variance understand what they're looking at, and attach pictures. Now once you apply for the variance, you need to understand that that is going to prompt the city and county to come out to the property and actually look at it. So you are calling them out to come down to the property to look at it. There has been a couple occasions where they've just approved it. No big deal, they don't even come out, but you are going to be prompting them to the fact that there is something encroaching, and if it looks like they need to come out, they definitely will come out. The process for getting a variance takes anywhere from like a week to a month. So that process is kind of lengthy. So if you are going through the variance process, you want to get a jump start on that. I like to tell the director that I'm sending this to that I have a time constraint. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to get it in time, but if you let them know, please try to get this done as quickly as possible, they tend to work with you. So if you left it alone and you just let it go, like let's say you're working with the seller and you want to go ahead and get the variance right off the bat before you even put a property on the market, you can take your time, kind of a thing. It might take a little bit longer. And then, of course, there is a filing fee. So, depending on who's going to pay for it, if it's coming out of the agent pocket or if it's coming out of the seller's pocket, there is a $100 application fee, and that needs to be included in your packet. If you don't include the fee, they will do nothing. So, make sure that you definitely include that fee. They will, I think they will email you, or sorry, they will mail you a receipt. And so here, yeah, see here it tells you that you'll get a response in a period of time. This is actually too long. I've definitely, it doesn't take this long, but you should factor it in just in case. Okay, so these are the procedures for applying for the variance. Now they call it a surface encroachment agreement or authorization, but it's still the same thing. We're talking about a variance. Okay, now the letter. Okay, here is the letter regarding the variance. Okay, so here we have Weston Wataru, the property address, TMK, and then your request for authorization of surface encroachment. Then you just kind of come down here and just explain your situation, the situation regarding the survey, putting in the items that are encroaching, and then you say that you're enclosing the survey and the filing fee. And in this case, I made a note here that the buyers that would be taking over, because it was so close to closing that it might come after we actually closed. But anyway, this is a nice letter that's already been done that we wrote for this particular situation, that if you happen to have a variance situation, you can use this and just pop in your own information here and replace all of this. Okay, and that covers the encroachment agreement, getting that mailed out, and also with getting a variance sent out. And hopefully you will go through this process and get it done as quickly as possible so you can close on time. But these are very important things to do. If you know what you're doing, you can probably get through it real quickly and it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the tutorial for encroachment agreements and variances.